final resting place of the legendary Queen Nefertiti. She died in the 14th century BC and is thought to be Tutankhamun's stepmother. One theory had been that she was laid to rest in Amarna.
Ancient Egyptians believed that speaking a dead person's name kept them alive. To destroy a name was to destroy the soul forever. This was a fate worse than death. It meant total oblivion. Someone wanted Nefertiti to suffer this fate. For centuries, her body remained a ghost. She was the most famous woman in the world, yet she was nowhere to be found.
She was renowned for her beauty in ancient Egypt, and inside the Kimball Art Museum for a look at the new exhibit, Queen Nefertari's Egypt.
Science has finally caught up with history. The DNA results sent shockwaves through the world. They reveal a bloodline doomed from the start and a queen who met a violent end. You will not believe what was hidden in her bones. Shadow of the Sun Queen. To understand why this DNA discovery is so shocking, you first have to understand the sheer magnitude of what was lost. Nefertiti was not just a queen, she was a powerhouse who ruled alongside her husband, Pharaoh Akhenaten. Together, they did something that had never been done before in the history of Egypt. They got rid of the old gods and fired the powerful priests. They moved the entire capital city to a remote patch of desert called Amarna. This was a massive religious revolution. For a few years, they were the center of the universe. They lived in a golden city dedicated to the sun. This was not your typical ancient city. It was built fast with white stone and shimmering heat. Art from this time shows them as a loving family holding their 6 daughters. It looks like a picture of perfection. They were the ultimate power couple rewriting the rules of reality itself. But here is the catch. There is something very strange about the art from this era. If you look closely at the statues, they do not look like normal humans. They have very long skulls, big bellies, and wide hips. They even have fingers that look like spiders. For a long time, people thought this was proof of aliens. They said Nefertiti and her husband were hybrids from the stars. While that sounds cool, the reality in their genes is even weirder. Just as their power reached the highest point, the record stopped cold. It is one of the greatest vanishing acts in history. Around the 12th year of the reign, Nefertiti simply evaporates. One day she is leading a parade and the next she is gone. There is no record of her passing or a funeral. Most suspiciously, no tomb was ever found for her. For hundreds of years, historians thought she just fell out of favor. Maybe she was sent away or passed away from a sickness. But the lack of evidence feels like it was done on purpose. The temples they built were torn down stone by stone. Their names were cut out of the walls. The city of Amarna was left to the desert sands. It was as if the desert was ordered to swallow them whole. Most people do not realize that the ancient Egyptians believed your soul died if your name was forgotten. Someone wanted Nefertiti gone from the earth and from eternity. They wanted to make sure she could never reach the afterlife. For decades, people have been digging in the sand for a clue. They found many mummies, but the great royal wife stayed a ghost. She was the face that launched 1 million museum visits, yet she was nowhere to be found. The mystery of her disappearance became the biggest prize in history. It was a puzzle with missing pieces until now. Science has finally caught up with history. The crazy part is that the search for the queen led researchers to a tomb that everyone had ignored for a long time. Genetic mystery unlocked. Deep in the Valley of the Kings, explorers found tombs that did not fit the story. The valley is a place of death and silence. It is a canyon baked by the sun where kings hope to sleep forever. But it is also a place of total chaos. Tomb robbers and floods have messed with these graves for 3,000 years. In 1817, an explorer named Giovanni Belzoni found a tomb called KV-21. He was looking for gold in grand statues. He was disappointed with what he found, but it was a gold mine for modern science. Inside, there were 2 female mummies with no clothes or jewelry. They were left to rot in the dark. They had no names and were in very bad shape. One had her arm crossed over her chest in a queen pose. But with no name, she was just a body. They were just debris left over from a robbery. One of them would eventually become the focus of this investigation. There was another discovery that was even more important. In 1898, Victor Loret opened a tomb called KV-35. It was a massive find with many royal mummies hidden by priests. Imagine walking into a dark room with the dust of centuries and seeing Egypt's greatest kings in a pile. But among the kings, there were 3 bodies dumped in a side room. There was a young boy, an older woman, and a younger woman. The younger woman was a tragic sight. She had been badly damaged by tomb robbers, her chest was smashed, and her right arm was missing. There was a horrific hole in her face where her mouth and jaw used to be. It looked like a scream frozen in dried flesh. For over a century, she was just a museum curiosity with no name. People walked past her glass case every day. They had no idea they might be looking at the most powerful woman in history. In 2010, researchers decided to look closer with genetics. They were not even looking for Nefertiti at first. They wanted to build the family tree of King Tut. They wanted to know who his parents were because the records were so messy. The Amarna period is like a black hole because later kings tried to erase it. So the scientists took samples from the bone marrow. They drilled into the ancient bones to get DNA. The results that came back sent shockwaves through the world. The DNA proved that the younger lady was not just a random person. She was the biological mother of King Tut. And more than that, she was the full sister of the mummy found in another tomb. That mummy is almost certainly Akhenaten. This revelation narrowed down the possibilities a lot. We knew Tut's father was Akhenaten, so his mother had to be someone important. But here is the snag. Nefertiti was never known as his sister. History says she was the daughter of a high official. So we have a massive contradiction. Was the younger lady Nefertiti in the history books wrong, or was she someone else entirely? Some think she was a secondary wife or even a daughter, but the facial reconstruction of this mummy looks exactly like the famous bust of Nefertiti. It has the same high cheekbones and jawline. Is it possible the DNA is telling a truth we are afraid to hear? It suggests Nefertiti was the king's sister, making their marriage a genetic disaster. The bloodline was doomed from the start because of the choices the royal family made to stay pure. Shattered Queen's fate. The DNA analysis did more than just give us names. It gave us a medical chart that reads like a horror story. When scientists mapped the genes of the royal family, they found a terrifying lack of diversity. The ancient royals were obsessed with keeping their blood pure to be like the gods. The gods were often brother and sister, and the pharaohs wanted to copy that. But biology does not care about royal titles. Biology punishes a lack of diversity. The genetic profile of King Tut and his mother showed a massive pileup of harmful genes. We are talking about bone deformities, club feet, and scoliosis. Their immune systems were almost non-existent. Basically, the whole family was walking on eggshells. They were fragile and sickly. They were living on borrowed time. The scan of the younger lady showed that her bones were incredibly brittle. There is a wild theory that links this to the alien-looking statues. Some experts think the family had a disorder that caused long limbs and strange faces. This explains why the king looked so weird. He was not an alien. He was a walking collection of genetic errors. If Nefertiti was his sister, she had the same problems in her cells. This context changes everything about the violence found on her body. The massive wound to her face was first thought to be from robbers looking for gold. Robbers were brutal and would rip heads off for necklaces. But modern forensic experts suggest something much more sinister. The scans show that the wound happened right around the time of death. If this mummy is Nefertiti, she did not pass away peacefully. That blow to the face would have ended her life. It suggests she was hit with a heavy object with a lot of force. Because her bones were so fragile, the hit was catastrophic. It paints a picture of a violent end, maybe even an assassination. Think about the political climate back then. The king had destroyed the economy and banned the old gods. Everyone was angry. When he died, Nefertiti was left in a dangerous spot. Did the priest corner the queen in her palace? Did a general decide that silencing her was the only way to save Egypt? The smashed mouth is very symbolic. In ancient Egypt, you need your mouth to speak spells in the afterlife. Smashing the mouth was a way to make sure she could never talk to the gods. This is the terrifying part of the DNA discovery. It is not just about the violence, it is about the legacy she passed on. The DNA of the two babies found in Tut's tomb shows the end of the line. They were stillborn because of the genetic errors passed down from the parents. The bloodline did not just end, it collapsed under its own weight. There is even a theory that a plague at the time hit them harder because of their genes. They might have been the first victims of a pandemic that wiped out a dynasty. If this mummy is indeed the queen, her DNA links her to a tragic cycle of death. She was not just a ruler, she was a victim of the tradition she tried to keep. There is a twist in the timeline that makes the story even more complex than a simple ending. Broken dynasty genes. Before King Tut took the throne, there was a shadowy pharaoh who ruled for a short time. For a long time, people thought this was a man. But the evidence is pointing somewhere else. What if Nefertiti did not die in year 12? The theory says she became a co-regent and took a new name. She might have ruled as a full king just like other famous women did. There are clues all over if you know where to look. Some carvings show a figure with a king's crown, but the body of a woman. Even some of the items in King Tut's tomb look like they were made for her. The famous gold mask of Tut has fascinated people because it looks very feminine. It has pierced ears, which kings did not usually have on their masks. It looks a lot like the bust of Nefertiti. Did Tut inherit her burial gear because she died suddenly, or was it because her memory was being erased? The theory suggests she ruled as a king to hold the empire together while Tut was a child. She had to act like a man to get respect. But this would have been the final straw for the people who liked the old ways. A woman acting like a man and worshiping a sun disk was too much. If she became a female king, it explains why her tomb is missing. Kings were buried in a different place than queens. When the old order came back, the priests wanted to wipe her out. They wanted to destroy the memory of a woman who acted like a king. This matches the violence found on the mummy. A female pharaoh in a time of crisis would have a target on her back. There are even old letters that add to the drama. An Egyptian queen wrote a desperate letter to the king of the Hittites. She said her husband was dead and she had no son. She asked him to send a prince to marry her and be the king. She said she was afraid. This does not sound like a powerful ruler. It sounds like a woman surrounded by sharks. She was trying a risky move to save herself. The Hittite king eventually sent his son, but the prince never arrived. He was eliminated at the border. This was a clear sign of a coup. A powerful man in the court likely had the prince eliminated to take power himself. If someone was willing to do that to a prince, what would they do to the queen? This supports the idea that she was silenced and her body was hidden. The people in the background of the royal art might have been the villains all along. Do you think the battered mummy of the younger lady is really the lost Queen Nefertiti? Or is her true tomb still waiting behind the walls of King Tut? If she was the king's sister, does that change how you see her? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe for more mysteries. Thanks for watching.